right. This is going to be a little bit long-winded, I think, and a little bit off the cuff, but I really want to discuss any of this first part of the book. I can say it will be non-spoiler in terms of me having no clue where this is going to go, but I want to talk about the first 200 pages of this book. And in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of, maybe people would contest this, but there's not a lot of plot in this first part of the book. I could kind of explain it in a way where the first 200 pages so far, it's broken up in these different parts. Instead of chapters, it's just these different parts. How many parts is there? I think there was 13. And I have just finished parts 1, 2, and 3, and I am on the part 4, which is called, which is named after the namesake of this book, Anathem. So let me just show you it there. Pretty cool, eh? Okay. So I did Provener, which was this kind of ceremony of people. I have to build this all up. Let me build this all up if you haven't heard anything about this book first. And again, this is going to be a little bit long-winded, but I find this very fascinating so far. I think a lot of people will bounce in the first 150 pages of this book. And I would say if you are stumbling upon this video and thinking about DNFing it in that first 150 pages, I would say hold on, just a little longer, get to page 190 or so, which is part number 3 is from about 150 to 190 or so. So get through part number 3, okay? So this is what it is. We have this world that I don't think this is our world in any way. It has this long history. Shoot, I'm having such a hard time flipping around here. It has this long timeline, which you can see. It kind of starts with this foundational character who has 2 daughters. And we go back to this foundational character. It like reads almost like a creation myth, but it's not a creation myth necessarily. I don't think it's more of like an enlightenment from this initial person, because this kind of convent that they are in, it's not towards like a deity as far as I can tell. And like a lot of the interest is kind of discovering discovering more about that initial person and what he would have taught and what he would have seen. Like there's this statue that they go and see every so often or whatever, and he's looking up and he's clearly seeing something like important. And even though this is like a convent, right, it's not towards him necessarily seeing like a god or anything like you would maybe see in a lot of these stories. But it's like everything has to do with math and science and engineering within this large kind of isolated place. Within this place, they have these bells. They have people isolated into these different areas. Some are behind like these doors or barriers, where some of them open every 1 year, some open every 10 years, some open every 100 years or 1,000 years. And at those times, like we find ourselves in year 3689 or something. And so the first chapter, we are seeing like there's this daily sort of bell thing happening where the bells ring everyone kind of shows up from behind their little curtains or their doors or whatever, but they're not splitting those. And like at this time, at the end of chapter 1, we have the door, and I might not be explaining this well, but this is what I'm getting out of it, and this is why I think you might find it interesting. But we have door 1 opening and door for the 10 years opening, and our main characters are in this 10-year sort of section. And it's interesting, some people might be collected from the outside world into a certain like area, like what happened with what we would call our main character. And interesting, people who would go to the 1,000 years sort of sealed off area would get collected even when they still have the umbilical cord stump. Like if you've ever had a kid, after the umbilical's cut, they kind of seal the edge of the stump, and it like just dies off and it just falls off. It's kind of gross. Falls off like a scab. But it's like nasty until that happens. But yeah, the people who go into that 1,000-year area would be like these newborns, so that they are not contaminated with things that are happening in the 100-year area or the 10-year, or like anything outside. And there's supposed to be some, there's supposed to be some limited kind of knowledge, so that the stuff happening on the inside of these areas are pure from the philosophies or the technology and things from the outside world. So people in the 1,000-year area are very much living at a different time, and they kind of develop different lingo and different, they might have the same words, where a lot of this, at the start of different parts, there's like a dictionary that has different terminology as it's used by the people in the outside world, which are called the extramuros, and the people in like the middle areas and people deep within. And it's a very different sort. Like imagine us having contact with people for the first time once year 4,000 hits. In this case, we have, like, even going back 100 years, they're in the year 3,689. And so the doors opened, and these people in the 10-year area, they have 10 days to go and kind of commune with the people in the exterior sort of world, like their old homes and things like that, and they tour where they used to live, and things have changed, and sometimes they're like maybe disappointed that things haven't changed enough. We have things like cell phones and like TVs that would be very new to some people. But I imagine we're going to get to that year 3,700 in 10 years from where I'm at. And that will be like when the 100-year thing happens, and what will they see? How will life have changed for them? Like, think of us going back to 1925 and seeing how things were, let alone 1,025, and let alone 10 years ago. Look how much has changed. And so there's an element of this book where that on its own is interesting enough for a lot of people, I think, but it's a little bit slow going. It's a little bit slow going for this first part, and you're going through mud a little bit. I find it fascinating, but you have to know kind of who you are. And if you are willing to give a book a lot of your attention, this will reward you in that regard. Now, it's like this convent about math and philosophy and things, and so there are multiple kinds of, I don't know what you call it, like rules of thought or families of thought and things like that, and so they're always discussing different ways of viewing things. They are a lot of the interest in this first part of the book is their dialogue, trying to be very precise about their terminology and viewing something. We have one character that was just kind of viewing ants and viewing like how they are working together and how they would do that. Anyway, it's so much more interesting than the way I am saying it. Obsession with symbols and the math behind those symbols. There's a whole glossary at the end that I'm going to almost every page as we kind of have the different, we have the different philosophies slowly kind of built up in the reader's mind as we're going, and so it's very well thought out in that regard. It doesn't feel like it was just willy-nilly thrown together for a namesake. And there's people who are very focused on this sort of thing or that sort of thing. He will prove that he's thought it out by having a fascinating discussion about that said way of thinking. At least I find it fascinating. Maybe I'm just an idiot. But I find that this is a very intelligently written book. And so, anyway, we have that statue of that main guy. He has two daughters, and later statues kind of got put in where one is more looking away from what he's looking up at, and another one's kind of pointing at it and almost is saying, and they're discussing what could she be possibly saying, and we have like different rules of thought that way, and then between them we have different, hopefully that makes sense. And throughout all this 6,000 year period from that time to the time that we are in this book, there have been moments where people from the outside world have, kind of like invaded the convent for technology or for this reason or that reason, like ugly periods and ugly moments that are very, very well thought out, and like the people are constantly going back and referring to some of these big moments that have happened, and in a way it's a little hard to keep track of, but as long as you go slow, it's totally worth it. I would say that the first 150 pages, like that took me all week to do 150 pages, and then today, sorry, I got interrupted real quick. Where was I? Anyway, the different rules of thought is very interesting, but at the same time, you don't want to be like, it feels a little bit like you're doing a major crash course on these different kinds of philosophy and science and engineering. Well, not so much engineering, but math and other things. And you think, is this whole book going to be just about exploring those different things? And I thought, man, I'm only this far in. How can I go the whole book doing that? Like, this is 900 pages long. And so something happens at the end of this kind of period where they're out for 10 days, and within the convent sort of area, there are the different factions, and it's almost like a sorting hat sort of thing where people can kind of choose their choose their faction or their way of thinking that they're going to focus on for their time. I don't know, for forever until they die, or for their time for a while. I don't know. I think it's basically a like a sorting hat sort of thing, but they're choosing where they want to go. And we have an interesting like thing like that in The Will of the Many. I love that kind of thing in books, in The Giver, where they all go and they have their, I always found that kind of interesting. So that's also happening here. And so we get that in the first 200 pages or so, but also, and I want to talk about this a little bit. This will be minor spoilery for how the plot is going to maybe pick up a little bit, but again, I don't know. I'm just telling you kind of what's happening, where the plot is finally kind of getting away from some of this part where I think a lot of people will dip and maybe get into something a little bit more exciting. uh, we have, they're not the only one in the world that's like this, and I believe there are different kind of cloisters or sanctuary. I might be getting the terminologies wrong, but there's other like schools or whatever, like these convents. Um, Again, I won't get all the names right, but and within them there are these astrology or astronomy sorts of towers, and they can go in, and there are observatories and things like that, and while our main character is up kind of serving a bit of a penance for something he did, and it's so interesting the thing that they have them do as kind of a punishment, which is, since they're so logical and focused on learning, a part of the penance, which I won't go into the details, but has a way of kind of stifling that and really setting them back in a way that I found interesting. But these kind of observatories are blocked off, that he notices, while he's up in this area where he can kind of see these ceremonies continue, but he is kind of set apart from it, and he can see that again so he's wondering why it would be closed. Like, is there something people don't want them to see? Is there, like, exactly that. So a part of it now is there are some shakeups where people are going to different schools of thought, which he wouldn't think would usually fit them. He's been gone for, it seems like a month doing this penance sort of thing. And he really wants to know what is in this observatory that people don't want him to know about. And there are these interesting kind of inquisitor types that are around, that we kind of always have our eyes on them. Like, what do they know that we don't know? What do some of the higher ups know that we don't know? And it sort of feels like a Harry Potter with his invisibility cloak, and we're going to see what he can uncover. And so now it feels like the plot is thickening into something. And so I would just say, hold on if you are finding the philosophizing and the rhetoric and stuff of the first 150 pages to be too much. It does get more interesting. The plot goes, it seems to be taking off and about to do something. So it's like a slow burn, and I couldn't be more excited about whatever it is that I'm about to uncover with this main character. So anyway, I will talk to you guys soon, and if I feel compelled to do another thing at the halfway mark or so, I'll do that. But I just wanted to talk about this book before the end of the night. So I'll talk to you later.